In the year 2001, in Quebec City, I was at a demonstration fighting against this free trade agreement called the Free Trade Area of the Americas, the FTAA, which hopefully some of you haven't heard of. And the reason you haven't heard of it is because the largest globalized social movement in world history put an end to it, similar to how we put an end to the World Trade Organization's agenda and a lot of other things during this large-scale global revolt of last decade. And interestingly, we were fighting two notable organizations, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And the IMF's big thing was these predatory loans to countries in the global south throughout the 70s and 80s that turned around on them in really, really harsh ways. And they often had to impose them through fascist governments, overthrowing democratic governments like in Chile in 1973 and putting in fascist governments. Not in Chile, but Chile, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Bolivia, all over the place. Interestingly, right, that some of these revolts of the last couple of years, notably starting in Burma in 2007, I think, when the big uprising of the monks happened. Why were the monks out in the streets? Because food and fuel prices shot up. Why did they shoot up? Because the IMF told the government to cut their subsidies, right? So the IMF caused that, right, through this increases. Egypt, IMF, cutting subsidies for food. Prices for wheat went way up. People couldn't afford to buy bread. In Tunisia as well. Portugal, Spain, Greece, Ireland, all just being dominated by the International Monetary Fund right now. It's got nowhere left to go in Latin America because all these leftist governments came to power, because these social movements became really powerful. So now the IMF's turning on Europe. They're like beginning to eat themselves. They're going to work their way back to the US. But, which is fabulous. It's also good because it's brought a lot of people together. And so I was in Quebec City, and I actually thought I was going to totally lose track of that story, but I didn't. Quebec City. I went up there as a pacifist. I think I was 17. I was a pacifist, and I got to Quebec City, and there's about 100,000 people there fighting Quebec style, and which is a pretty big deal. People were letting people into their houses to get on their roofs to throw stuff at the police, and at one point, so we had ripped the fence. They had built a 4-mile fence around the whole trade summit, and we had ripped it down in several places pretty epically. And I remember one time I got tear gassed, and then the last time I had been tear gassed, which was like 5 minutes before that, I turned around and run, and I ran straight into a van that was parked in the middle of the street. It was a news van, and then the news guy grabbed me because he thought I was trying to vandalize his van, and then he realized that I was like totally messed up from the tear gas, and then he like let me go to the curb. And so the next time I was like, all right, next time I get tear gassed, I'm not going anywhere. It doesn't really matter anyways. You're just gonna vomit, and then 5 minutes later you're gonna go back out and do it again. And so I was like just chilling. I was like, all right, I'm getting tear gassed again, whatever. And then I got hit directly in the stomach with a fire hose. And I flew backwards. I was like, okay, I guess I'm moving. But it was a good time because we were winning, and we shut the entire city of Quebec down. It was freaking beautiful. And so at one point, the cops ran through where the fence had been ripped down. They chased us through an alley, and we were running through people's backyards, and then we get cornered in this alley, and there's like 12 of us, and these cops just sealed off the alley, these riot cops, and then they just shot tear gas down at us. And this kid picked up a canister and threw it back, and then he ran over to us, and he was a white dude, and his hand was like pitch black, and he had a big hole burned into it. And he just was holding his hand out, and he was like, anybody a medic? Is anyone a medic? And he was like in shock, and I was like, dude, you need to go to the hospital. Like, a protest medic isn't going to be able to handle that, Put some water on it, But it was messed up, right? And these cops were chasing people. People were getting bit by dogs and stuff like this, and just, it was violent. And so at the end of the day, we're lined up these highway on-ramps coming up to where we had ripped the fence down earlier in the day, and the cops had totally sealed it off, because we were pretty close. Like, if we got through these cops, we could actually get into the red zone and disrupt the summit, which was the goal. And there's like thousands of us, and everyone was like drumming to the same drum beat. It was so powerful. I mean, it was really an experience. And then the cops just kept firing tear gas. It came out later their own official estimate was that the cops used 11 canisters of tear gas a minute for 3 days. So you can imagine. So anyways, people started throwing in Molotov cocktails at the police from out from under this bridge. And one of them just got, the cops had this shields in front and shields on the top of them, and one of them got right through the little opening, and this side of this cop got lit up. You know, they were long sleeved, the guy was fine, it's not like his skin was burning or anything. But mine was, because I had been tear gassed 47 times. And I was like cheering, and I was like, why are you cheering? You're a pacifist. And I was like, I guess you're not a pacifist. because I think these people deserve to feel some heat. Because I feel like crap. You know? And I seen a kid get his hand burn a hole in from these people. Why am I not allowed to? So anyways, that was that movement. And it was commonly referred to as the anti-globalization movement, which is a false dichotomy because it was a globalized social movement. In fact, its foundation was really laid out in Chiapas, Mexico, when the Zapatistas called for world social movements to come gather there and make a common agenda. So it started as a globalized movement. But I found myself, when that movement sort of waned after some of its victories and after 9/11 and just changing world, I found myself, a lot of my friends and I, being kind of depressed and feeling like this thing was over. And anyways, in a lot of ways, the Occupy movement and the Arab Spring and stuff come out of those same lineages. But in a lot of ways they don't. In a lot of ways it's new. And anyways, this is a song I wrote about calling myself out for being too nostalgic about things that have happened, and also calling out some of the older generation for being too nostalgic for the year 1968 and all the amazing things that happened. But like, life goes on, and you gotta adapt, and you can't live in the past. So I wrote this on September 16th, which is the day before Occupy Wall Street started, and I honestly hadn't paid any attention to the call for Occupy at all, not a bit. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. I was like, okay, cool. And so I was in Sweden, and people were like, yo, like, what's up with this Occupy Wall Street thing? And I was like, what Occupy Wall Street thing? And they're like, oh, people are going to like occupy Wall Street? And I was like, no, they're not. Seriously. That's where I was at. That's where a lot of my friends were at. And then I got to Spain, and people in Spain, indignados were asking me about it. And I was like, why is everybody, like, y'all don't get how things work in the U.S. Like, nothing's going to happen. I got to France, and people were asking me about it. And I was like, people are sleeping in a park. That's all. And then I was like online one day, right after the Brooklyn Bridge arrest, and I was just like watching Facebook, and I was just like, oh my God. Like, every single person I know is talking about this. This is huge. So by the time I got home, October 8th, Zuccotti Park was freaking wild, you know. But anyways, I wrote this song the day before it started, and it kind of is interesting. It's inspired by a book I have for sale back there called The Subversion of Politics, which he just bought. I'm very excited about that. But yeah, so. Like those 10-minute intros? It's best to know the word for what you got before it's gone. But you can't let yourself get stuck, 'cause you're afraid you might be wrong. You're nostalgic for 68, I'm nostalgic for 99. But sometimes thinking back too much can make you close your eyes. 'Cause what we do today matters both today and tomorrow. Well, the point of learning history is to build something new. I don't care what you read about unless it impacts what you do. You want to recreate 68, you want to recreate 99. Try learning their hard lessons to reflect and then refine. 'Cause the good old days just suck sometimes if you ask those who were there. And the answers weren't just blown in the wind, they were put there. What we do today matters both today and tomorrow. I've been causes and effects and times take decades to define. I've seen the long shadow 68 by the ruins of the Berlin Wall. I've seen the long shadow 68 in Seattle. And looking back from here now, all the pieces seem to fit. Sometimes it's hard to notice the changing world when you're right inside it. But without us, the future is a boat without a sail. Without our best attempts, we set